Hello everybody, my name is Dutchy, welcome to RPG Labs, and let's get right into this video. Alright, so in this video we are going to be talking about the bosses. Now, I'm going to be covering all the bosses up till the first, and then afterwards I will also do a video about some of the later bosses. But just so this video isn't going to be too long, I'm just going to cover up to the first, because a lot of people are still struggling with some of the bosses that are before the first and, well, the first herself. Obviously, a little bit of spoilers, but it's not really too bad because these are just straight up boss fights, so you have been warned anyway. Anyway, these are going to be the 6 bosses that we're going to be covering right now anyway. The Broodmother, aka Arachnophobic Nightmare. The Bloodspawn, basically a pile of garbage. The all-powerful Orb, also known as the Trial of Lingering Light. The Archon Commander, aka the most badass looking boss of the game so far. The Argent Hand, aka the guy who the Arch Commander just killed. And last, but also the first. Alright, let's start off with the Broodmother. Now, one of the first things you want to do with the Broodmother is usually take out all the smaller guys, because, well, if you're gonna get overrun by all of them, you might have a little bit of a hard time. This boss really isn't that difficult, so you should be able to basically wipe its ass no matter what. But one thing to definitely watch out for is the little minions everywhere, so try to take out those guys first. And also, she will shoot webs at you every now and then, which are kind of hard to avoid, so you want to make sure you avoid these as much as possible. The thing is with these webs as well, even if you dodge out of the way of them, if they shoot and you're still in the dodge window, it will still hit you no matter what. The iframes don't work on it. If she is actually shooting at you, you can actually stand in between where she's going to be shooting and you will be able to easily avoid it. She doesn't have a crazy moveset really. The only big thing she really does is the spider web. She hits you a bunch and she can also summon a bunch of minions every now and then. At one stage, she will turn her entire body into a crystallized version of it, and at that point you cannot really hit her too hard. You can actually either wait it out, or you can just keep hitting it to break it a little bit earlier. However, usually at this point I take the opportunity to start trying to kill some of her little guys, because they usually have spawned again by now. She also jumps onto the roof every now and then, and when she does this, she will throw down minions, and she will also throw down these little crystal things, which will pulse and deal damage to you every time it pulses. You can easily destroy these crystals, so I would recommend doing it, just so you have a little bit more breathing space for when you're fighting the little guys. Honestly, she's not really too hard, so you shouldn't have too much trouble with her, but this is just a quick guide on her anyway. Anyway, let's move on to the pile of garbage. One of the Bloodspawn's favorite moves is literally just jumping and dealing shock damage around him. Now, this is easily avoided by just jumping around. You don't have to go out of the circle, you can literally just jump right next to him and he can't do anything. Another really good thing about him is that you can actually use the block ability when he's attacking you, so you can literally stand right next to him and his attacks are very telegraphed, so you can see exactly when you need to block or counter. However, if you are using a gun or anything like that, just stay at a distance and do the jumpy thing every now and then as well, and he won't be able to do too much either. Now, this is actually the first boss with a cool little mechanic. Once you've actually defeated him, these 3 blobs will spawn who will resurrect him, but you can actually kill these blobs quickly enough and he will only resurrect once more. Once he's resurrected as well, he will start bouncing around everywhere around the map, summoning all of these little flame versions of him that will explode when making contact with you. However, these guys are very weak and easily to take care of. However, there are a lot of them and they will explode all at once on you. So there's actually a lot of AoE happening around you if you don't take care of these little guys. Something you can also do if you have Silo, for example, is actually use this little clone and you can just jump away and they will all explode on the clone itself, allowing you more time just to deal with the actual boss. This boss really isn't too difficult once you've realized that you can literally jump over most of his attacks, so just keep doing that and you should be absolutely fine with this boss. I mean, to be fair, he is literally trash, so, you know. Alright, let's move on to the Orb. Now, the Trial of Lingering Lights isn't really too hard. The only thing you have to do is survive a couple of waves against a bunch of enemies, and then you're basically done it. Now, these first enemies, they're really not too hard at all. In fact, you can just easily kill them before they can even get any moves off, really. But they do have a nice little move where they have a nice little AoE attack, so just make sure to dodge those. And they also do this laser beam right in front of them, which is telegraphed also pretty heavily, so you should be able to avoid all of these hits. Now the second enemy type you'll probably see will be the Codex H. Now the Codex H will basically spawn and will do a bunch of ranged attacks on you, so you should be able to easily avoid them if you just dodge left and right basically. Now after this you will have to fight 4 different enemies. Now these could spawn in any sort of pattern, it doesn't really matter what. There's the bear, there's this bird looking thing, there's a sage, and then there's one of those Codex monks again, who will basically have a bit of an extra moveset and can heal himself. Now personally I usually take out the bear first because he is the most tanky, and well, he also has this really annoying move where when he slams onto the ground a bunch of little circles will appear around you where you're standing and will deal damage to you. So I usually like taking care of him first if possible. The bird, however, has a bunch of abilities that can dash straight towards you and allow him to deal damage from multiple sides. It's really hard to avoid some of his attacks, so he is also a pretty good priority target. However, the sage and the monk later on I feel like are always the lowest priority, just because their attacks are pretty easily avoidable. Now personally I don't think you'll have too much trouble with this boss fight in general, just because it's just a bunch of waves and just regular enemies really. The only really cool thing about this is the orb. Now I also know what a lot of you guys are probably thinking when it comes to the orb.
We have to destroy the orb.
Destroy the orb? Don't you see? The orb is our lives now. To destroy the orb would be to destroy our very purpose, so if we wish to live long, meaningful lives, the orb must not be destroyed.
What if I use this dart?
Now let's move on to the first proper boss in the game, I reckon, because this guy is no joke if you're a little bit underleveled. Especially towards the end, because you'll need to deal quite a bit of damage in order for you to kill him, otherwise he will instantly kill you. Now his moveset is pretty basic, however he will summon a whole bunch of his friends at one point who will deal damage to a certain part of the arena. Now it's pretty simple to actually avoid these. The only thing you have to do is get out of the red part of the arena and you will not take any damage. Most of his moves you can actually counter or block, so you can actually easily fight him 1v1 when it comes to close range. The only thing I would say though is that you need to make sure you watch out for his ground slam. Now his ground slam will basically start him jumping up into the air, and then when he crashes down he will leave a little bit of a crater that also does damage to you over time. Now round about the halfway mark you can also probably get this round about a quarter of his health, but he will start levitating in the middle of the arena. Now while he's doing this he will release a shockwave at the end of it. The only thing you need to do is quickly jump over it and you will avoid all the damage. You can also block this attack if you really want, but I would just say just jump over it because then you don't waste any stamina. Now the end of the fight is very important, because if you don't deal enough damage to him when he's at a certain amount of health, he will immediately kill you no matter how much health you have. So basically what would happen in the phase of the fight is that he will start going to the middle of the arena, he will hold up his sword, and he will release little shockwaves. I recommend actually ignoring these shockwaves and just deal as much damage as you can. Especially if you have a healer on your team, like Windgrave for example. He will be able to either shield you with his immortality sort of field, or he will be able to just pop up that halo above him and you will be able to hit him and gain health. And every single time he hits you with those shockwaves, it doesn't deal too much damage, so you should be able to out-heal the damage that he does to you. However, don't stress too much if you don't have a Windgrave on your team. Just make sure you deal enough damage to him for him to die before he finishes it. Because if he finishes it completely, you will die instantly no matter what, because this damage that he does at the end is ridiculous. Alright, now let's move on to the Argent Hand, which is actually a pretty simple boss fight, but also has some little gimmicks. Now when you first enter the arena, you'll just have to kill a bunch of these little monks, who really aren't too hard. They have the same movesets as the ones from the Trial of Lingering Light, with that little laser in front of them, and basically a big AoE that charges up, so you will be able to easily kill these guys without taking too much damage, or any damage at all. However, where you start needing to worry for this fight is the second part, because in the second part they will summon a bigger version of themselves, and this version can annihilate you pretty damn fast, especially if you don't have too much health. Now, if you want to have a little bit of an edge on him at the start, you can actually kill as many of these little monks who are praying to him as possible, trying to summon him. The more you kill, the more damage it does to him. However, this doesn't deal too much damage, so if you can't kill more than one or two, don't worry about it. Now, one of his main abilities is where he just slams onto the ground and it will make an explosion of where you are standing exactly. So as soon as you see him slam onto the ground, you need to move, dodge out of the way, or just run away. You can actually also use the iframes of like your ultimate, for example, to get away from it, but I would recommend not doing this unless you have no other choice, really. Or if you were gonna use your ultimate anyway, then, you know, obviously use it then. He also has a second version of this ground slam, where basically what happens is that he makes a dome around him, and when he slams down, it will also have a delayed reaction for an explosion to happen underneath you as well. And then we have his little Hadouken sort of attack, which shoots out around about 7 projectiles that deal quite a bit of damage. Now the best way to avoid this attack, I reckon, is to use the iframes you get from dodging, or you could just use the iframes from your ultimates, which I like doing as well. Or if you have a character like this, you can dash straight through him with one of your dodging attacks as well. If you start seeing him levitate, he will start doing explosive damage towards the arena. Now, there will be just red marks on the ground everywhere. Try to find a spot that's not red and you will not take any damage. This part is really handy for when you have a gun, because that means you can still deal damage to him. Because if you're a melee user, you will not be able to deal damage because you need to get that out of the way. Now, round about the halfway mark, he will start summoning smaller versions of himself that will make a dome around you, and once that dome is fully complete, it will explode, dealing mass damage. Now, you can actually avoid this dome by iframing at the right moment. However, I would much prefer usually killing the guys before they finish it, because it will destroy the dome, and, well, you and your teammates won't be caught out by the damage that it does. However, you can always use the iframes from dodging or the ultimate iframes that you get to get out of it quickly, or you can just try tank it. But honestly, I always prefer making sure this guy dies, because if he dies and your teammates aren't that great at dodging, for example, you will make sure that they survive as well. Now, do be warned, at one point they will summon 2 of them at the same time, and if your teammates aren't helping killing both of them, you might not be able to kill them. So at this point, it might actually be worth dodging out of the way. Because in the end, even if 1 or 2 of you are alive, at least you can try kill the boss. But do try to revive your teams if you have the opportunity, but don't go out of your way fully, because if you die, then, well, you're gonna have to restart the entire boss again. Alright, now let's move on to the first. Now the first, I reckon, is literally the first big boss that you're going to be fighting. A lot of people have been struggling with this one, but if you just know what to do a little bit against her, she's actually not that bad, especially if you have high damage output against her. Now the first little thing that the boss fight will actually do is actually throw you in front of a little bit of a walkway that you have to memorize. Now this is actually kind of cool, because later on in the boss fight you will actually need to do this exact same thing, except in the middle of the boss fight, which I actually kind of like. Now just be nice and quickly just keep jumping up and down on this sort of pedestal, so people will know exactly where to walk. It's just a little bit of a courtesy, so, you know, be friendly, do it. Now, her beginning attacks are very basic. She basically will just attack you with a bunch of range attacks, and these are pretty easily dodgeable. Just dodge left and right, and she has a big charge-up attack, which she throws out these energy blades sort of things that come out of the ground and will hit you. Now, I would just recommend waiting for the charge, and then as soon as you see her about to hit, that's when you just dodge out the way. It's pretty predictable when she's gonna do it, so you should be fine with that. Now, at one point she will also summon this laser, which will start going towards you. Just slightly move out of the way. These lasers aren't really too fast. Sometimes I do get hit by them, but they do deal a lot of damage. Now, at 2 points in this fight, she will go to the middle of the arena, and she will start shooting out those blades everywhere. Now, it is actually quite predictable of where these blades are going to go. If you just look in the middle, she'll have like a sort of direction where she will be shooting them out. The first sets of blades will always go to the left, and the second sets of blades will always go to the right. So the only thing you have to do with this is just go the exact opposite ways of which way the blades are going, and you should be able to avoid most of the damage. Just have a look in the middle of where the blades are going to come out. Now, the second time she does this, she will also cast a meteor shower, dealing heavy damage to you. Now, these are no joke. They can actually one-shot you if you have a little bit too less health, so definitely watch out for them. I would recommend just running opposite from your teammates, because usually they will spawn on you or your teammate, so at least if one of you guys goes down, you can revive the other one. Because once this meteor shower is over, you have a bit of time to quickly revive the guy. Now we come to the proper second phase of the fight, which you will go down to these purple platforms and you will basically need to deal as much damage to her as possible, because in this part of the fight she is a lot stronger. Now she technically has the same abilities as before with those balls and the blades that are coming out of the ground. The only thing is though is that this time they are upgraded to hell. For example, the blades are multiplied by quite a bit, and with the balls they actually fire out in every single direction and also have some blades attached to them. Now what I would recommend with the blades is just dodge quickly behind her when she's about to do it, because then you will be able to easily avoid them. The further away you are from her, the easier it is for her to hit you. But also when it comes out to those balls flying everywhere, also I've been saying balls quite a bit, that feels weird. Anyway, with those balls you need to basically be as close as possible to her, and the hitbox for the balls and the blades will not be able to hit you at all. Now at one point when you deal enough damage to her, she will start making the platforms disappear. Now not all of them, because some of them will be able to stand on, however they will become invisible and you will need to sort of memorize where they are. However, I would just recommend standing in the middle and quickly blocking every single one of the walls that are coming up to you, because if you do this, you can basically, well, easily survive the entire ordeal. There is actually a little bit of a cheating way how to do this, which I'm sure they will patch out, but I will just mention it anyway, just so hopefully the developers can see it and probably patch it out, because it is definitely not intended to be this way. Now you can actually jump off the platform and you will spawn back up top, meaning that you are fully safe and she cannot hit you whatsoever. And then afterwards you just press R1 on that little orb thing over there and you will be able to go straight back into the fight. Now in her final stage, she will basically do her normal moveset, except this time she will also add the meteor shower randomly throughout the entire area. However, these ones aren't as fast as the ones that you saw at the beginning, so you have a little bit more time to get out of the way. However, it is also still quite hard to actually dodge them sometimes, because you will be dodging a lot of other things at the same time. Now this is definitely where it's handy to have a gun or something like that, because you can basically avoid a lot more of the incoming meteors and at the same time her attacks a lot easier. However, if you do have a melee weapon, I would definitely recommend just making sure that you always know where to go for safety, and you can, yes, also jump off the map still and go back to safety if you really need to. You will still take a little bit of damage jumping off the map, but at the same time it's not as much damage as you would receive from the meteor, so I reckon it is definitely a worth trade-off. But anyway guys, hopefully this video helped you guys. If it did, why not leave a like, why not subscribe and do all that kind of stuff, and I'll catch you guys all later. Alright, bye!